D stands for dream, E stands for excellent, A stands for analysis. We must analyze our obstacles. We must analyze our assets. Now, my first big obstacle to deal with was the losing of my sight. As I said, I was 9 years old when a disease began ravaging the retina in my eyes. And the same thing happened to both me and my sister, but at separate times from each other. We're sitting in our classroom. 1 minute I could see the chalkboard like a stroke. The next minute I could not. And to our aggravation, we were both shipped off to a special school where they had what was called a VH room. VH stood for visually handicapped. I hated the word handicapped, and I despised the word blind. The head of the VH department was a wonderful man named Ed Bryan, along with what I thought was around a 100-year-old volunteer, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Bryan would say, "Ricky, you need to learn how to read Braille. It will open up to you a world of knowledge." I would argue back, "Mr. Bryan, the Braille Bible stands 3 feet high. I would need a wheelbarrow to carry around one book. How stupid is that? I'm not learning Braille. Don't ask me again." Accepting help from others was a weakness, and it was a weakness I was not going to admit to. What I did admit to was Mr. Bryan's magic tricks. He would show us the coolest magic tricks. I would then perform my card magic for the class. And Mrs. Smith asked me, she said, "Ricky, why do you like cards so much?" I said, "Because I don't have to see. I can feel what I'm doing." Mrs. Smith performed a kindness that really set my destiny. She found this old book at a garage sale, bought it for a nickel, called Expert at the Card Table. And she recorded excerpts on this giant 7-inch reel-to-reel tape recorder and said I could take it home and practice. The techniques and terms were so technical, she had no idea she was teaching an elementary school kid how to cheat at cards. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Some of the sighted students were not very nice to us in the VH department. One bully would flip the bird in front of my face and say, "Hey, Magoo, how many fingers am I holding up?" While I was distracted, another bully would pick the wallet out of my back pocket. He would dangle it in front of my face, say, "Hey, got any money, Magoo?" And when I'd grab for my wallet, he'd throw it over my head to his friend behind me in a cruel game of keep away. And the tease turned ugly when they started slapping me across the face going, "Can you see to grab your money, blind boy?" The other kid jumped on my back, drove me to the ground, kicked me in the ribs, and ran off laughing, saying, "Thanks for the money, Magoo." As I laid there weeping, I thought about my new favorite show on TV, The Green Hornet, starring Bruce Lee as Kato. And I thought, one day, I'm going to learn karate and kick in their faces. Home life was not much better. Having defective kids was loathsome to our mother, and she was selfish with everything from her affection to feeding us. I was always starving. 9th grade gym class, I weighed in at 68 pounds. During lunch, I would stand at the lunch tray drop-off and ask the other students if I could have their trashed leftovers. And on really bad days, I would take discarded banana peels, take the school's table mustard, cover the banana peels, and eat them. That wasn't the worst of it. Cemented under our 1-bedroom house was the room I lived in, and it could not be sealed. And during the wintertime, I would have as much as 2 to 6 inches of water under my bed. And that created mold that led to torturous asthma attacks that would last for weeks on end. And no matter how much pain I was in, my mother would never spend a dime on a doctor call. As I was coming to terms with the rejection of my mother and the loss of my sight, on Christmas Eve, my aunt's house catches on fire. And my uncle and 4 of my cousins are burned alive. My paternal grandfather was killed when his wagon overturned and he was crushed to death. My dear sweet grandma, she remarried. She came home from work to make lunch for her new husband. He met her at the door with a roofing knife, jabbed it in her throat, and cut off her head. My sister Deborah, my best friend and my biggest fan, she would tell her girlfriends, "My brother's so good at cards, he never loses." She's walking home from school and was hit and killed by a 21-year-old drunk driver. And to put a cherry on top of the disastrous cake, it turns out our mother was having an affair with a sailor and ran off with him. Those are some pretty dirty deals. I'm going to show you some deals I could use to take your money. What's that card on top, Kathy?
It's the 7 of hearts.
7 of hearts. Number of perfection. I want the 7 of hearts. So what happens is I deal to the other players. Only when I'm ready do I deal the 7 of hearts. Watch face up. See how the card sits there. But you have to deal as neatly as if you're dealing from the top. Watch again. Watch again. I deal it in slow motion. 7 on top. See, I hit the other players. Only when I'm ready do I deal the 7. Watch face up. See how the card sits there as the second card is dealt. Here's one-handed, one-handed. Now, when the 7 is face down, you can't tell you've been swindled. That's called dealing seconds. Isn't that fun? Hey, thank you. Thank you. Make sure they're all face down. Give me a shuffle. I'm going to have a little fun with your wild cards. I'm going to try to triple cut the deck and cut one of your wild cards. What's that?
Queen of Cups.
We did it. Triple cut? What's that?
Queen of Hearts.
We did it again. Triple cut? What's that?
Queen of Spades.
And you did shuffle the deck. Watch, watch, watch. You did shuffle the deck, right? Watch, 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 watch. You did shuffle the deck. Okay. Pay attention. Watch carefully. Watch carefully. Watch carefully. Watch carefully. Yes? All right. Thank you. This is pretty. Put them back in the deck. Face down. Shuffle them up.